Live from Citizen TV, this is JKL with Jeff Koinange.
And you know, if it's Wednesday, it's all about those three letters on the keyboard that follow each other. JKL. Thanks so much for joining us on this very first Wednesday in July. We're continuing our discussion with Gen Zs. Today we're calling it Causes and Faces. And the guest, folks, the guest right in the middle of all the action. Abdul Khalifa, activist, the guy who was sprayed by all the water. You remember him? We'll show you the pictures later on. Unbelievable. He'll be here right now. Marvin Mabona, he calls himself KOT Sonko. He's a digital activist. He's also in the house. Dr. Darlene Ikirima, she's a health humanitarian. She'll tell us where she is or where she was during the protests. Dr. Simon Kigondu, President, Kenya Medical Association. Very important because they're treating everybody. Police, Raia, the works. They were not discriminating. It's going to be a good show, Ayub.
Yes, front line.
On the front lines.
And so, this is, quite a wealthy panel to give us the accounts of what really happened last year and this year. And lovely to have them here on the broadcast.
Absolutely. Start tweeting, folks, at Koinange Jeff.
At Ayub Abdikadir.
At Citizen TV. The hashtag is JKLive. JKLive begins right now. Tonight.
Tumeambia polisi, mtu yoyote mwenye atakaribia police station, piga yeye risasi.
Unfit to hold office, 3 civil society groups moved to court demanding that Interior Cabinet Secretary Kipchumba Murkomen retract his controversial shoot-to-kill remarks.
Albert, usilale Albert.
We seek justice. Emotional funeral service held for blogger Albert Ojwang as family demands answers from the government. 2 Makueni MCAs summoned to DCI headquarters for questioning over their role in the Gen Z protests.
Alikuwa anakaa Umoja, wakasema wende na wale majenzi wengine huko wende wakumbuke wale waliuliwa last year. Kufika saa 8 pale midi ilizimwa. Hapo ndio watoto wetu waliumia. Ndio hapo ninasikia ni mtoto wangu pia aliumianga hiyo masaa wakati midi ilizimwa.
Pain and loss. A family in Kirinyaga demands justice for their son shot dead by police during last week's Gen Z protests.
Njoki Shege is our sign language interpreter. Civil society organizations led by Katiba Institute have filed a petition at the Milimani High Court seeking to have Interior CS Kipchumba Murkomen declared unfit to hold public office over his remarks on the use of lethal force during anti-government demonstrations. The organizations want Murkomen to publicly retract his shoot-to-kill order, accusing him of constitutional violation and encouraging police impunity. They warned that his statements made in the aftermath of June 25th Gen Z-led demonstrations could fuel a rise in extrajudicial killings in the country. Stephen Leto begins our coverage tonight with the following report.
Interior Cabinet Secretary Kipchumba Murkomen has been dragged to court by civil society groups, Katiba Institute, the Kenya Human Rights Commission, and the Independent Medical Legal Unit, accusing the CS of overstepping his mandate by issuing policing statements that they claim incite unlawful violence, misrepresent the law, and undermine the Constitution. The 3 organizations now want the High Court to call the CS to order. According to court papers, Murkomen's shoot-on-site directive is likely to trigger a surge in extrajudicial executions and widespread violence, resulting in loss of lives and serious human rights abuses. The lobby groups further urged the court to declare that Murkomen violated his constitutional duties by inciting police officers, telling them that the guns in their custody are not toys, and directing them to shoot anyone approaching a police station or allegedly endangering an officer's life. The human rights groups say the Interior CS has contravened Clause 1 of Article 75C and has demeaned the Office of the Cabinet Secretary, Ministry of Interior and National Administration.
Tumeambia polisi, mtu yoyote mwenye atakaribia police station, piga yeye risasi.
Murkomen has been facing backlash over the directive, which he made a day after Gen Z protests led to mayhem and destruction across the country. The CS has since sought to clarify his remarks, insisting it was not a shoot-to-kill order and that police officers fully understand the legal limits on the use of force.
I think it's important for citizens to appreciate that our police officers are very professional and they know the circumstances under which, when they are in danger, they are trying to protect themselves or protecting lives, they have to use force to the extent that is necessary. But that does not mean that we are telling our police officers to become reckless. These are law-abiding citizens.
The three lobby groups now want a public clarification and have urged the court to issue an order compelling Murkomen to issue a written retraction published in a newspaper of national circulation at his own expense, fully withdrawing his comments and clearly outlining the legal limits on the use of force and firearms by police. The human rights groups also want a similar retraction aired on a television station with nationwide coverage at Murkomen's personal expense, fully withdrawing his comments and clarifying the legal circumstances under which police may use lethal force. The Interior CS is further required to convene a press briefing to issue the same clarifications publicly. Stephen Leto, Citizen TV.
The family of late teacher and blogger Albert Ojwang is demanding for answers from the government following his brutal murder while in police custody. During an emotional memorial service at Ridgeway's Baptist Church, family members, the clergy and leaders called for accountability from law enforcement agencies over a surge in killings, abductions, kidnappings and forced disappearances of young Kenyans. Seth Olale with the highlights from the service.
At the Ridgeway's Baptist Church as the body of the late Albert Omondi Ojwang was ushered in for his memorial service. His family, led by his grieving father Meshach, mother Yukabeth, widow Nevinina, and their young son, was surrounded by friends, clergy, and human rights defenders who gathered to honor a life cut short too soon. Through tears and broken voices, the family vowed not to rest until they find justice. They are demanding answers from the government. What led to Albert's arrest and why was he brutally murdered while in police custody?
Watabaki na utajiri na sifa za aina yote, lakini hawatakuwa na amani katika maisha yao.
Albert, usilale. Usilale, Albert.
His last words were, I love you, see you soon. So seeing him soon here or even in the mortuary it really broke me.
The government, through the National Police Service, stands accused of silencing dissent among the youth through orchestrated killings, abductions, and enforced disappearances.
How about Albert's mother? How about Albert's father? And several others who could not and cannot have the opportunity of getting to the highest office in the land. This is the result.
Regulate Mamba Mandaman. That's something we want to assure the Kenyans that we as the members of parliament, we are not going to accept it to see the day.
It is well. Ojwang's family thanked Kenyans of goodwill for their unwavering support during this deeply difficult time.
Kenyans generally who gave them in the form of 1 shilling, 10 shillings, 100 shillings, 1,000 shillings.
The late Albert Ojwang, remembered as loving, kind, generous and outspoken man, will be laid to rest on Friday, 5th July, at his father's homestead in Kakot Village, Homa Bay County.
The late Albert Miles Omondi Ojwang, who was picked from his father's homestead and made to travel for hundreds of kilometers to Nairobi, now returns back to his father's homestead in a coffin. His family wants Kenyans of goodwill to remember him through the virtues he stood for, including good governance, fight against corruption and justice. Seth Olale, Citizen TV, Kiambu County.
An application seeking conservatory orders to restrain the Deputy Inspector General of Police, Eliud Lagat, from accessing his office and performing his duties or using any facility of the National Police Service has been withdrawn. The application, which was linked to the ongoing investigations into the death of blogger Albert Ojwang while in police custody, was withdrawn after the court was informed that the matter had been overtaken by events following Lagat's declaration that he had stepped aside. Lawyer Ndegwa Njiru, representing the petitioner, told the court that they would be seeking leave to amend the petition to reflect the change in circumstances. Justice Kavedza allowed the withdrawal of the application and set the matter for mention on the 10th for directions on the main petition. The crackdown on individuals and politicians suspected to have financed and facilitated demonstrators to cause havoc and chaos during the Gen Z-led demonstrations has intensified. A day after 2 politicians were arrested in Kiambu County, 3 other politicians from the counties of Makueni and in Kirinyaga have been summoned to record statements. As Franklin Wala now reports, 2 of Gachagwa's allies who were arrested on Tuesday night will remain in police custody until Friday.
DCI detectives have begun a manhunt of politicians and influential figures who are suspected to have a role in mobilizing and facilitating youth to cause chaos during Gen Z protests. The latest suspects summoned by police are 2 MCS from Makueni County. The 2 Albanas Wambua and Francis Mutuku presented themselves to detectives at the county DCI offices, but were directed to appear before detectives at the DCI headquarters on Kiambu Road on Thursday. Investigators alleged the duo are responsible for mayhem reported in parts of Makueni County on June 25th during Gen Z protest.
In the entire country, mimi ndio financial wa hiyo jameni. Kwa hivyo watoto wa Kenya, wao wako na haki yao, wacha wapambane na wao, miaka ikiisha tunawasort vizuri kupitia kwa election.
Punda imechoka. Na kama punda imechoka, lazima ingangane ipate freedom yake. Hakika mambo imekuwa mazito, lakini Kenya cannot be ruled na itaongozwa bila kutumia sheria.
Another member of county assembly in Karatina was questioned by police on what transpired in Karatina and parts of Nyeri. After the brief session, the member of county assembly was ordered to report to DCI officers in Karatina on Thursday for further statement recording.
Though we leave it to the police to conduct the investigations, my client in any way did not incite violence on the protest that occurred on the 25th of June.
Meanwhile, 2 Kiambu youth leaders associated with the DCP party leader Rigathi Gachagua, who were arrested on Monday, were arraigned on Wednesday.
But the most worrying thing is that the allegations being made that one individual, Mr. Kenyanjui, was able to raid on a police station in Dagoretti. And you know, the most important thing is that to notice that they're also saying they want to review the CCTV in respect to that particular police station. So the question is, if the police station was ran down and it was burnt down, where will they retrieve these CCTVs from?
Respondents will be detained at Ruiru police station until the 4th of July.
The 2 Peter Wanjiru and Wandiru Thiga will remain in police custody to allow police conclude investigations into their alleged involvement in the chaotic protest and destruction of properties in Kiambu. Franklin Wala, Citizen TV.
A family in the county of Kirinyaga is demanding for justice after a police officer allegedly killed 28-year-old Brian Maina by striking him on the head during last week's demonstrations. The family is accusing the government of switching off the media to unleash the deadly force on unarmed protesters. Willie Lusige has that report.
The scars of police brutality against protesters who turned out this year to commemorate the 2024 Finance Bill protests are still being uncovered. In Kagumo, Kirinyaga Central, the family of Brian Maina, aged 29, says they have never slept since receiving the news last Wednesday that their son, a father of two, had been killed by police while participating in the protest.
Alikuwa anakaa umoja, wakasema wende na wale majenzi wengine huko wende wakumbuke wale waliuliwa last year. Kufika saa 8 pale midi ilizimwa. Hapo ndio watoto wetu waliumia. Ndio hapo ninasikia ndio mtoto wangu pia aliumianga hiyo masaa wakati midi ilizimwa.
Brian, a resident of Umoja, Nairobi, had joined other youth in the city center to mark the protest commemorations, not knowing it would be his last day alive. While in the city streets, police lobbed tear gas at the protesters. Brian was overwhelmed by the tear gas. He fell, and it's that point that an officer struck him at the back of the head with a baton, fracturing his skull.
Wakati walipigwa na tear gas, ikamweza, ndiye alikuja akagongwa. Ndio tear gas unaanguka chini. Sasa ndio kuja akagongwa hapa, aligongwa hii rungu ya hapa. Juu hakuweza kuamka tena. Hata ni bahati wajenzi wanapendana waachanagi. Mmoja ni alirudi akamuona kambeba hivi. Wakatafuta gari, hawakupata gari. Wakachukua pikipiki.
A postmortem examination collaborated eyewitness accounts.
Tukapika saa 3, tukaambiwa ameenda. Kupigwa picha kaambiwa amevunjwa skull.
Now in grief, the family is crying for justice, saying no police officer has been arrested or held responsible for Brian's killing.
Nimedhulumiwa na serikali kwa kuwa mtoto ambaye hakuwa na hatia, hakuwa na anything ya kupiga askari, isipokuwa tu ni maji na bendera na simu.
They accuse the Kenya Kwanza government and President William Ruto of bearing responsibility for the deaths of protesters. Brian will be ready to rest this Friday. Willie Lusige, Citizen TV, Nairobi.
President William Ruto says Africa will continue investing in primary sectors such as manufacturing and agriculture to create jobs and guarantee food security, while acknowledging that the future of global economic competitiveness lies in investing in services, technology and human capacity to innovate. Developing nations cannot fully adopt that, as the primary sectors are still the main drivers of economic contributing 40% of the gross domestic product in sub-Saharan Africa. The head of state made the remarks during a forum dubbed Africa Debate 2025 in London.
Africa's growth path cannot be either or proposition. We cannot choose strictly between investing in services or supporting our primary industries. That would be a counterproductive and false dichotomy. We must do both simultaneously. Our experience suggests that while investing in services sector is necessary, it is not sufficient to address the urgent challenges of poverty reduction and unemployment while achieving meaningful economic growth. Investing in agriculture-led industrialization can enhance domestic food resilience and food security. According to estimates by the Africa Development Bank, FAO and McKinsey, Africa's agribusiness market could grow from US $300 billion in 2010 to US $1 trillion in 5 years.
Former Interior CS Dr. Fred Matiang'i has called for a public inquest into the unresolved murders in the country, including Rivayala bodies, saying he had nothing to do with the killings of 36 Kenyans whose bodies were retrieved from the river. And despite President William Ruto disbanding a DCI unit called the Special Service Unit, SSU, linked to the deaths, another unit is said to be in operation and has been linked to the recent spate of abductions and extrajudicial killings in the country. Here's Emmanuel Toh.
They remain one of the most controversial killings in Kenya, as the country was treated to weeks of shocking retrieval of mutilated bodies from Rivayala, Siaya County in 2021. To date, the murders are still unresolved.
I, William Samoei Ruto.
President William Ruto had before and after assuming power termed the deaths as state-sponsored, with the name of the former Interior CS Dr. Fred Matiang'i coming up whenever the topic is brought up.
Thanks for asking me that question.
Tuesday, the former CS, in an exclusive interview with Citizen TV, breaking his silence on the matter, giving fresh details of the events before and after the bodies were discovered dumped in the infamous river, with a DCI team dispatched to the scene.
The DCI spent some time there with a team from the DCI. When they came back, we asked for an inquest.
Matiang'i calling for an open public inquiry into the mysterious murders.
We go face the inquest, and I'm ready to go before a magistrate or a judge, whoever it is going to preside over that inquest, and say what I know about it.
The former super CS in retired President Kenyatta's government also defending himself over any involvement.
What happened with the file? I didn't live with the file. The minister, by dint of even the law itself, you cannot be part and parcel of the operations. We are not saying the minister is in charge. When the bodies were traced out there last week, I didn't hear anybody saying Kipchumba Murkomen is dumping bodies at Rivayala and so on.
According to a report released by the Missing Voices organization in 2022, 12 bodies had head injuries, 2 abdominal and chest injuries, 1 drowning, 1 head and chest injury, 3 strangulation, 1 peritonitis, while 5 were undetermined. However, it is the abduction, disappearance and subsequent murder of a Kenyan taxi driver and 2 Indian nationals, Zaid Kidwain and Zulfikar Ahmed Khan, by a suspected killer squad from the DCI dubbed Special Service Unit SSU, that became the proverbial last straw that broke the camel's back. The lives of the 2 Indian nationals, who were on a mission to join President William Ruto's digital campaign team exactly 2 weeks to the August 2022 general election, ruthlessly ended. A month after taking over power, President Ruto made this pledge.
Mimi nimeamurisha juzi ivunjwe ile ilikuwa inaitwa special sijui nini ya police ambayo ilikuwa inaua wa Kenya kiholela.
4 years since the operation of the killer squad were exposed, and 2 years after a promise to end its operations, it seems the unit may have just mutated to a different one.
So Operation Support Unit is the one which replaced SSU, and it is doing exactly what SSU used to do.
The recent abduction of blogger Thiang'ui Kinyagia, who is still missing after being picked up by individuals alleged to be DCI officers, adding to the list of abductions. Emmanuel Toh, Citizen TV, Nairobi.
Justice Chacha Mwita has extended orders suspending a Communications Authority of Kenya directive that banned the live coverage of demonstrations on June the 25th. Justice Mwita has also instructed that petitions similar to that of the Law Society of Kenya and the Kenya Editors Guild be consolidated. A mention has been scheduled for October the 27th. Meanwhile, the Communications Authority Director General David Mugonyi has accused the media of celebrating violence against police and the destruction of government installations.
In defense of taking 3 television stations off air after banning the live broadcast of demonstrations on the first anniversary of the 2024 anti-finance bill protests, the Communications Authority has cited national security. CA Director General David Mugonyi, in an affidavit filed in response to petitions challenging the action as illegal, painting a precarious picture of the security situation, which he said justified the drastic measure. Mugonyi accusing broadcasters not only of fanning the violence witnessed on the day, but of celebrating violence against officers of the law and destruction of public assets. Mugonyi making the case that while the Constitution guarantees freedom of expression, there are exceptions to the rule, making reference to Article 33(2) of the Constitution, which draws the line on freedom of expression at propaganda for war, incitement to violence, hate speech, or advocacy of hatred. Mugonyi accusing the media of actively working to inflame tensions through, among other things, unbalanced commentary. He also accused the media of failing to employ delay mechanisms, 7 seconds minimum, as required on broadcast licenses, which would have protected the public from graphic content, including children who could have been traumatized. Those opposed to CA's actions, however, viewed it as an attempt to conceal police excesses and leave protesters vulnerable to execution. Mugonyi pointing to anecdotal evidence and uncited academic research that purportedly shows a correlation between live broadcast coverage and an escalation in violence. Notably, in view of the carnage left behind by the events of June the 25th, Interior Cabinet Secretary Kipchumba Murkomen was categorical that court orders would not dissuade the state from taking similar actions in future. Olive Burrows, Citizen TV.
All right, looks like, thanks so much, Olive. The Gen Z protests continues. Saba Saba's 5 days away, you know that?
On Monday, that is.
Monday, July the 7th.
One event after the other, and the significance that has on Kenya's space now, given the generational shift in ideas, in thoughts, and the call for good governance.
Absolutely, and that's our topic of discussion here today on The Bench. We have Dr. Simon Kigondu. He's the president of the Kenya Medical Association. He's going to tell us about how they set up medical camps inside the basilica so that they could take care of folks who were injured. We've got Dr. Darlene Ikirima. She's a health humanitarian. We've also got Marvin Mabonga. He calls himself KOT Sonko. He's a digital analyst. And on the far end, Abdul Khalifa. He's the guy who was sprayed with water. Remember him? Those pictures, iconic pictures, they'll be placed over and over and over again. We'll show you those pictures. And he survived. And they're here to talk about their experiences and what happened that day. Keep tweeting at Koinange Jeff.
At Ayub Abdikadir.
At Citizen TV Kenya. The hashtag is JKLive. JKLive takes a break. We'll be back in the meantime.
Welcome back and thanks for staying with us. Millions of people around the world are projected to lose their lives following the permanent withdrawal of American funding for aid. The American Secretary of State Marco Rubio announced the stoppage of the implementation of foreign assistance through U.S. aid. Washington says there was no transparency in the program that saw billions of dollars disbursed around the globe for different programs. Here's Brenda Wanga.
After a 64-year run, the United States foreign assistance administered through the U.S. aid has come to an end permanently. The Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, in pulling the plug on U.S. aid, stated that instead, foreign assistance that aligns with Trump's administration and advances American interests will be administered by the State Department. The agency provided aid to poor and third-world countries around the world, with missions primarily focused on Africa and Asia. In most locations, U.S. aid concentrated on the provision of food and free vaccinations against diseases such as HIV, which is particularly prevalent in countries in sub-Saharan Africa. Families and refugees in the region have come to rely on this aid, and the withdrawal will hit sub-Saharan Africa hard as a region.
Because they're seeing the funding situation is going bad every day, the food ration is going down, and most of them are curious to know when is the situation going to improve.
That permanent cessation of humanitarian aid through U.S. aid is projected to have morbid impact across the globe. A report published in The Lancet projects that this will result in the deaths of 14 million people across the globe. The report shows that the withdrawal of humanitarian aid will adversely affect the health sector, especially HIV and AIDS management and prevention of malaria. In total, 14 million deaths are projected between now and 2030. Of these deaths, 4.5 million will be of children under the age of 5. The report further states that through USAID, 91 million deaths have been prevented, especially those that would have been caused by HIV, AIDS, malaria, and neglected tropical diseases. Kenya is amongst those countries already reeling from the impact of the stoppage of this humanitarian aid, with programs like healthcare, agriculture, and community initiatives left with funding gaps and job losses. Marco Rubio has justified this move, stating that while America has funded humanitarian assistance, the recipients of the same have not reciprocated in kind. He says countries in sub-Saharan Africa, despite receiving $165 billion in aid, did not fully support USA interests at the United Nations, while those in the Middle East and North Africa favor China over the USA, despite receiving $89 billion in aid. The USA has also accused NGOs of misusing the funds at the expense of the American taxpayer. Brenda Wanga, Citizen TV.
Deputy President Professor Kithure Kindiki has today came to the defense of frequent fundraisers that have been dubbed as empowerment drives, saying they are part of the promise made by President William Ruto. Speaking in the county of Tana River, Kindiki said the fundraisers were not done in isolation, outlining the construction of modern markets as parts of efforts to uplift those in the lower income bracket. Leaders in the company of the Deputy President also called on locals in the coast region to shun divisive politics.
The country must develop equally, and Tana River and other parts of coast, other parts of Kenya, which sometimes have been left behind, we must make sure that we now walk shoulder to shoulder, all the 47 counties, as brothers and sisters accessing equal development.
Wewe ni DG, ulipatiwa Deputy President. Chansi ulikuwa ukisema, nyinyi watu wa Tana River mnashare. Nyinyi watu wa Kosi mnashare. Oh, kila siku mountain. Oh, kila siku mountain. It is about the Republic called Kenya. It is not about one area.
Uongozi wa William Samoei Ruto ni uongozi wa kutuma viongozi kwa ground. Umeelewa? Sasa mimi nataka niwaambie, nitarudi hapa tena na tena na tena, kwa sababu niko na instructions kali sana za kuboresha mambo ya uvuvi, mambo ya madini, mambo ya blue economy, fishing, shipping and maritime affairs.
Hapa sehemu hii mnapenda ukabila ama mpendi? Yule mkabila ashindwe? Yule mkabila apotee? Na ukabila yake ndogo ndogo? Na milima ambayo iko na mashimu?
Residents of Makongeni are raising concerns about what they say is a rushed and opaque enumeration process to make the way for a government-backed affordable housing project under President William Ruto's flagship development agenda. According to Makongeni Residents Association, the community was neither properly informed nor consulted. They cite glaring gaps in communication, pointing to a lack of transparency in critical stages from enumeration and beneficiary selection process to plans for relocation. The residents are calling for clarity, structured engagement and a stoppage to evictions until their voices are heard and their future secured. Ode Francis has that report.
Residents of Makongeni today woke up to an enumeration exercise to pave way for affordable housing, a move they say they do not agree with.
Wanatuvita kwa nini? They did groundbreaking in Landimawe on Saturday saa 8 ya Makongeni phase 1. Kwa nini wanatuambia bomoe nyumba? Walete mwenjereli atuambie ukweli.
Disagreements between residents and enumerators forced Sub-County Police Commander Judith Nyongesa to visit the area, the police calling for calm.
Today, we were here to take census of the persons living within Makongeni Estate because President wants to launch a project of affordable housing in this area.
Residents, however, say they are dependents of many Kenya Railways retirees who are owed pension funds, and the homes afford them cheap housing in Nairobi. They say they were initially offered compensation of 150,000 shillings, which they say they rejected.
Hatuwezi wakubalia wafanye chochote leo wanataka hapa ndani ya estate. Juu ni property ya mababa zetu, walienda retire na kuna wale walienda bila kulipwa. Na mpaka sasa hivi wajalipwa.
The objective is to know how many residents live in Makongeni, so that now if there is anything that will benefit the people who live in Makongeni, they all benefit.
The residents decry lack of access to right information has raised suspicions about the enumeration exercise.
Hawezi kuja tu like abruptly. Kama ni ukweli president anataka kuwa uplift wananchi. Angeanza na Mbotela penye alibomoa, atengeneze manyumba huko, akishatengeneza tuame kama koshua anataka tuishi fiti na alete affordable houses.
The land is worth around 50 billion. Hapa tuko CBD. We have done 20 letters to the PS Hinga. We've done 20 letters, more than 20 letters to all relevant authorities, but none of them has responded to our letters.
After the citizen crew departed, a senior officer at the Makongeni police station summoned some of the residents and reprimanded them for voicing their concerns. Ode Francis, Citizen TV, Nairobi.
Time for business. The Competition Authority of Kenya has declined a request to reserve 60% of transport services for local farms. The request, brought forward by the Kenya Transporters Association, was aimed at addressing concerns of alleged discrimination by multinational logistics companies. But as Wangoi now reports, the authority says such a move would violate the competition laws.
The Kenya Transporters Association had petitioned the National Assembly's Departmental Committee on Trade, Industry and Cooperatives, raising alarm over what it termed systemic discrimination by multinationals in the logistics space. In its March 2024 submission, KTA claimed that although local farms own 90% of trucks in Kenya, they receive less than 30% of transport contracts. The association also decried the alleged repatriation of profits by the foreign companies, adding that some shipping lines control almost every part of the logistics chain, from shipping to clearing and transporting goods. This then makes it hard for Kenyan businesses to compete. Acting on the petition, the committee requested the Competition Authority to review the complaints. And after screening the submissions made by the Transporters Association, the authority has concluded that while the concerns warrant a deeper investigation, the proposal to reserve 60% of contracts for local firms would violate competition laws. The authority has now launched a full probe into the conduct of major logistics players, including Maersk, the Mediterranean Shipping Company, and even the Pacific International Line. A detailed report is expected to be submitted to Parliament by the end of September. Wangoi, Citizen TV.
The government has challenged African countries to make bold decisions and mobilize their own capital resources to drive industrialization and reduce dependence on external financing. Speaking during the opening of the Next Frontier Africa 2025 summit hosted by the Kenya Development Corporation, the Principal Secretary for Industrialization, James Mukhwana, said time had come for the continent to chart its own development path by investing in homegrown solutions and strategic sectors. The three-day high-level forum aims to unlock new investment opportunities across key sectors, including manufacturing, health and agriculture.
I am here to remind you that Europe was industrialized by Europeans. America was industrialized by Americans. China was industrialized by Chinese. And India has been industrialized by Indians. Where the African gets this idea that someone else will be dropped from heaven straight, and we have declared that person investor.
Ours would be conversations with investors, conversation with policymakers, innovators who have projects in these specific sectors. One, we're able to connect them with investors. Number two, KDC is able to spot those opportunities and therefore go ahead and provide de-risking capital and also to attract private capital into these specific sectors.
A farmer in Machakos County is turning dry land into a hub of livestock productivity. Bernard Wagetu, a Dopa sheep farmer in the county, is showing that with the right breed, strategy and innovation, success is possible, even in the toughest of climates. Dennis Otieno brings us that story on this week's edition of Smart Farm.
In Kantafu along Kangundo Road, dusty terrain and dry grass define the landscape. But here in the semi-arid sub-county of Matungulu, Machakos, on this quiet farm, there's a different story, one told through the bleats of over 800 Dopa sheep.
There are quite a number of reasons why we settled for the Dopa sheep. One, they grow fast. Secondly, their feed conversion rate is quite very high. The other important thing is that they are able to utilize any form of pasture. You find the pricing for quality pattern is quite attractive.
Bernard Wagitu started this farm in 2011. What began as a learning journey has turned into a full-scale commercial operation.
It has been a journey of trying to align ourselves not only with the market, but also with the vision of our farm. We believe in imparting knowledge to our next frontier in terms of our next level farmers.
Each sheep is tagged and marked, part of a carefully managed breeding program aimed at producing healthy, fast-growing animals.
So the markings you find is that now that's how we identify our sheep, that's how we class our sheep, that's how we pair our sheep. All these are all about performance record keeping.
And while the farm sits in a semi-arid area, Bernard has devised a strategy to stay feed secure, growing almost all his fodder on site.
99% of the feed that we have in the farm is what we grow. So we are growing our lucerne, we are growing our super napier at the back. We've been growing a bit of our maize at the back also, and also brachiara for the hay.
On just a quarter acre, his feedlot houses hundreds of sheep in a zero-grazing system. Fat lambs are ready for market within just 2 months of fattening.
We are aiming to have your sheep grow within 200 to 300 grams per day of weight. And this is only done when you ensure that, well, they are well vaccinated, they are well dewormed, and also the feed that you're giving them is highly nutritious. Dopas are known for having flavored meat, quality meat, that is also succulent, easy to eat, doesn't have a smell.
But it's not just the animals that make this farm smart. Bernard has invested in solar energy and drip irrigation, reducing costs and improving sustainability.
According to Bernard, Dopa sheep are the real deal, as they offer Kenyan farmers a valuable combination of resilience, productivity, and a strong market demand. He reckons these animals not only promise a profitable future, but also play a pivotal role in strengthening the livelihoods of communities that rely on them. Dennis Otieno, Smart Farm.